and welcome to the second series of the History in the Bible podcast. More of the history in more of the books in all the Bibles. Episode 2.41, Jesus' Disciples Part 2, The Other Guys. In the last episode, I babbled on about the cabinet of three, Jesus' best mates. Let's look at the others. After the cabinet of three, Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, John and James, the other 9 disciples barely rate a mention in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark and Luke. Many are just names in lists. Only the Gospel of John and the book of Acts tells us anything about them. Later Christians were frustrated by the obscurity of these 9. There must be more deeds to relate, surely. Right through to the early Middle Ages, Christians composed Acts and Gospels in their names to flesh out the stories of the obscure 9. The great exception to the obscurity of the 9 is, of course, Judas, son of Simon Iscariot. The Gospel writers only ever use the Greek version of his name, Judas. His Hebrew name was Yehuda, Judah. The Roman province of Judea was full of men named Yehuda. After Satan, there is no more reviled a person in the New Testament. He is mentioned 16 times in that book, pipping even one of the cabinet of 3, James, son of Zebedee. I'll have a lot to say about Judas in later episodes. Judas Iscariot shares his name with another disciple. This other Judas takes second place as the most forgettable student. This other Judas is given one single line, and that at the Last Supper. That's so sad. Jesus is speaking. Quote, John 14:18. I will not leave you orphaned. I am coming to you. In a little while the world will no longer see me, but you will see me, because I live. You also will live. Judas, not Iscariot, said to him, Lord, how is it that you will reveal yourself to us, and not to the world? Jesus answered him, Those who love me will keep my word, and my Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them. End quote. The New Testament writers were vexed that another disciple shared the name of the traitor. The Gospel of John calls him Judas, not Iscariot, just to be oh so clear. Luke calls him Judas, son of James. The Gospels of Mark and Matthew were so embarrassed that they renamed him Thaddeus. Early church fathers harmonized the 4 gospel lists by positing one disciple with 2 names, Judas Thaddeus. Fair enough. The stigma against the name Judas passed down in English and French usage. Today, Judas is known in those languages as Jude. There are 2 other people called Judas in the New Testament. One is Judas, brother of Jesus. The other is the writer of the letter of Jude, who identifies himself as the brother of James. Since this James is usually held to be James the Just, that would also make this Judas the brother of Jesus. The churches are undecided about all the Judases in the New Testament. Catholic tradition holds that they are all the same person. Judas, the brother of Jesus, is Jude, the author of the letter, is the disciple Judas, not Iscariot. Protestants often argue that Judas, brother of Jesus, and the author of the letter are the same person. They deny that he is the apostle Judas, named by John and Luke. The letter of Jude is a tiny 25 verses long. According to the Bible aggregation site BibleGateway.com, the letter is one of the least popular books in the New Testament, alongside the last 2 letters of John and the letter to Philemon. The author, whoever he is, rants against Christians, whom he believes are doing it wrong, with all their communal love feast rubbish. The letter is most notable for quoting directly from our old friend, the first book of Enoch. Many church fathers were not happy about that. The letter struggled to find a place in the canon, and was only grudgingly confirmed after 2 centuries of dispute. Later traditions fabricated a feeble history about this Judas. He preached throughout the Middle East, and was martyred in the Roman province of Syria at about the same time as the Apostle Peter died in Rome. Let's move on to 3 other disappointing disciples: Andrew, Philip, and Bartholomew. Andrew is one of the sons of Jonah. Andrew is a Greek name, Andreas. His brother Simon Peter has a Greek and a Hebrew name. Why doesn't Andrew? Who knows? Andrew is often tag-teamed with another supporting trooper, the disciple Philip. He also only has a Greek name. The two might have been old chums. The Gospels describe Philip and the sons of Jonah as from the same town. As the little brother of the biggest of the big 3, you would think that Andrew would get significant airtime. Alas, no. Andrew and his best mate Philip put the bit into bit player. Here is one pokey reference. Quote, John 12:20. Now among those who went up to worship at the festival were some Greeks. They came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, and said to him, Sir, we wish to see Jesus. Philip went and told Andrew. Then Andrew and Philip went and told Jesus. End quote. Here is another, at the feeding of the 5,000. John 6:4. Now the Passover was near. When he looked up and saw a large crowd coming toward him, Jesus said to Philip, Where are we to buy bread for these people to eat? He said this to test him. Philip answered him, 6 months' wages would not buy enough bread for each of them to get a little. One of his students, Andrew, said to him, There is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they among so many people? Jesus said, Make the people sit down. End quote. Only the Orthodox tradition gives Andrew a decent shot at stardom. He is known as Protokletos, the first called, because of this passage. The scene is one of John the Baptist's revival meetings. Quote, John 1:35. The next day the baptizer again was standing with 2 of his students. And as he watched Jesus walk by, he exclaimed, Look, here is the Lamb of God. The 2 students heard him say this, and they followed Jesus. One of the 2 who heard John speak and followed him was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. He first found his brother Simon and said to him, We have found the Messiah. He brought Simon to Jesus, who looked at him and said, You are Simon, son of John. You are to be called Cephas. End quote. It was said that Andrew was martyred in Greece. For obscure reasons, he became the patron saint of countries as diverse as Ukraine, Scotland, and Romania. Early Christian fans were eager to expand on his story. Surely the brother of the great Peter must have done mighty deeds. Aficionados of Andrew produced vast amounts of fan fiction about their mysterious hero. The Acts of Andrew. The Acts of Andrew and Matthias. The Acts of Peter and Andrew. The Acts of Paul and Andrew. Andrew's mate, the disciple Philip, is a rather sad figure. Philip only has 2 friends, Andrew and the forgettable disciple Bartholomew. In Hebrew, that name is Bartalmai, son of Talmai. In Greek, Bartolomeus. The Gospel of John calls him Nathaniel. Nathaniel Bartholomew shares his sole moment in the spotlight with Philip. In this passage, he has a dig at the backward Galileans. Quote, John 1:43. Jesus found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him about whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus, son of Joseph from Nazareth." Nathanael said to him, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Philip said to him, "Come and see." When Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him, he said of him, "Here is truly an Israelite, in whom there is no deceit." Nathanael replied, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Jesus answered him, "You will see greater things than these." And he said to him, "Very truly I tell you, you will see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man." End quote. The nonentities Philip and Bartholomew never attracted fans. Other New Testament figures had many books attributed to them. Philip was credited with just 2, a gospel that is clearly Gnostic and a book of Acts. And the one devotee of Bartholomew was brave enough to write a gospel in his name. Later stories held that Philip and Bartholomew preached in Greece and the Middle East. Yet others told of Bartholomew preaching in Armenia and India. Bartholomew is the patron saint of the Armenian Apostolic Church. Both apostles, it was said, were martyred. Christians couldn't decide on the particulars of Bartholomew's grisly death. One account speaks of his being kidnapped, beaten unconscious, and cast into the sea to drown. Another states that he was crucified upside down. Another says that he was skinned alive and beheaded. So many ways to die. Yet another unremarkable disciple is Matthew, Mattatyahu in Hebrew, and Matthaios in Greek. He appears in the Synoptic Gospels and the book of Acts, but is unknown to the Gospel of John. He pops up a tiny 5 times in the entire New Testament. His call is used to exemplify how Jesus loves sinners. Quote, Matthew 9:9. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth, and he said to him, "Follow me." And he got up and followed him. And as Jesus sat at dinner in the house, many tax collectors and sinners came and were sitting with him and his students. The Pharisees said to his students, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" But when he heard this, he said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have come to call not the righteous, but sinners." End quote. A near identical story is told about a tax collector called Levi, son of Alphaeus. The church fathers decided that Levi and Matthew were the same person. After his call, Matthew evaporates. He makes a brief cameo in the book of Acts, where he is present when the disciples choose a replacement for Judas Iscariot. The church fathers decided that the disciple Matthew wrote the gospel of that name. That would make him an eyewitness to the events he narrates and the earliest gospel. Neither Mark nor Luke claim to be witnesses to the mission of Jesus. That was the common opinion until the mid-19th century. 150 years ago, scholars produced a host of arguments that Mark was the first gospel written. That is the universal position of scholars today. The disciple Matthew was demoted from a gospel author to just another camp follower. For more on that, why not snuggle down with your favourite hamster and listen to episode 2.27, What We Know About the Life of Jesus. Now on to another disciple called James. The New Testament is stuffed to the brim with people called James. One is James, son of Zebedee, whom we call James the Greater. Another is James, the brother of Jesus, James the Just, who plays a prominent role in the book of Acts and the letters of Paul. Let me turn to another James, described 4 times in the apostle lists as James, son of Alphaeus. In Hebrew, that would be Yaakov ben Halphi. In Greek, Iakobos. James, son of Alphaeus, is a complete nobody in the Gospels. His sole function is to round out the number of disciples to 12. James, son of Alphaeus, early on became identified with another obscure James, James the Younger. This other James is only mentioned as his mother's son. He is not described as a disciple. Here's an example. In this story, Jesus lies on the cross, and the women weep from on far. Quote, Mark 15:40. There were also women looking on from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene, and Mary, the mother of James the Younger, and of Joseph and Salome. These used to follow Jesus, and provided for him when he was in Galilee. And there were many other women who had come up with him to Jerusalem. End quote. Christians soon decided that the obscure James the Younger, whom Mark referred to, was the same person as the even more obscure disciple James, son of Alphaeus. Christians had more passages to ponder about the Jameses, like this one. Quote, Mark 6:2. On the Sabbath, Jesus began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were astounded. They said, Where did this man get all this? What is this wisdom that has been given to him? Is not this the carpenter, the son of Mary, and brother of James, and Joseph, and Judas, and Simon? And they took offence at him. Then Jesus said to them, Prophets are not without honour, except in their hometown, and among their own kin, and in their own house. End quote. This James, brother to Jesus, became known as James the Just. Early Christians balked at the idea that Mary had more than one child. They decided that James, the brother of Jesus, could have been a son of Joseph by an earlier wife. That would make this James a half-brother to Jesus. The most popular theory made different identifications. This held that both the Greek and Hebrew words for brother could encompass cousins. The Western Fathers believed that Mary, the mother of James, was sister to Mary, the mother of Jesus. James' mother had married one Alphaeus. Bingo! James the Younger was James, son of Alphaeus, was James, the cousin of Jesus, was James the Just. All 3 people were the same. To complete the entanglement, the Church Fathers decided that Alphaeus, father of James, was the same person as Alphaeus, father of Levi. And Levi, of course, was held to be another name for the Gospel writer Matthew. Does this make the evangelist Matthew another cousin of Jesus? Not necessarily. Christians were not keen to go that far. Alphaeus' son Levi or Matthew could have been by another wife. Yes, I know it's complicated. Believe me, I've just started. But I'll spare you. I'll return to all the people called James in later episodes, when we have all calmed down. Of all the minor disciples, Thomas, Theom in Aramaic, is the most intriguing. In the Synoptics, he is a nobody. The Gospel of John calls him Thomas Didymus. Both Didymus, a Greek word, and Theom mean twin. Thomas' one big scene in the Gospel of John is the story we all know. Long quote. John 20:19. When it was evening on that day, and the doors of the house where the students had met were locked for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After he said this, he showed them his hands and his side. Jesus said to them again, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, so I send you." When he had said this, he breathed on them and said to them, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven them. If you retain the sins of any, they are retained." But Thomas, one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other students told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the mark of the nails in his hands, and put my finger in the mark of the nails, and my hand in his side, I will not believe." A week later his students were again in the house, and Thomas was with them. Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it in my side. Do not doubt, but believe." End quote. Why is Thomas called the twin? A popular work called The Acts of Thomas attempted to answer that. This was written when the central government of the empire first began to destabilise around the year 220. Christianity was a growing religion, but one which the Roman state was suspicious of. The Acts is a series of entertaining episodic stories following Thomas as he evangelises India. Thomas is depicted as Jesus' twin, the earthly version of Jesus, while Jesus himself is entirely a spiritual being. Thomas is a sort of super saint. Thomas became the paramount symbol of a Christian, achieving Jesus' own level of spiritual advancement. Thomas was said to have founded a Christian community in Parthia and India, where he is regarded as a patron saint. Stories held that he was martyred in India. The disciple Thomas thundered back into scholarly attention in the 20th century as the supposed author of the Gospel of Thomas. Hear about all that in episode 2.30, John's Gospel of Knowledge. Now the last disciple, Simon the Zealot. I've discussed many disciples who are so inconsequential that you wonder why they are in the Gospels at all. Bartholomew, Matthew, James son of Alphaeus, and Judas Thaddeus. Simon the Zealot, also known as Simon the Canaanian, really takes the cake as an utter zero. He only appears as a name in a list. He's just there to make up the numbers. No one ever bothered to write a book using his name. There is no Acts of Simon the Zealot, no Gospel of Simon the Zealot. Later Christians invented a few half-hearted stories about his later career. Perhaps he evangelized in Egypt and Persia with his underachieving comrade Judas Thaddeus. Some authors said he was martyred, others that he died of old age. No one knew and no one cared. Let me sum up what we know about the disciples. Every Christian knows of the mighty 12. Of the 12, only 3 play any decent part in the Gospels, or the book of Acts: Peter, James, and John. The rest are ciphers. The Gospel writers cannot even agree on their names. The number must be symbolic, 1 disciple for each Jewish tribe. The reputations of the nondescript 9 were fabricated in late antiquity and the early Middle Ages. Outside the Gospels, the nondescript 9 are missing from early Christian works. Paul mentions only 2 of the disciples by name, Peter and John. Yes, he mentions James, the brother of Jesus, but remember, this James was not one of the 12 disciples. You're thinking of the other Jameses. The disciples do not appear in the very earliest Christian works outside of the New Testament. I'm thinking of the prayer book, the Didache, the letters of Clement, Bishop of Rome, and the letters of Ignatius, Bishop of Antioch. I covered these in episode 2.21, Battle for the New Testament, Earliest Times. Tradition holds that Clement was chosen by the disciple Peter and Ignatius by the disciple John. We believe that these books and letters were written from 80 to 120, the same time frame as the Gospels and the later letters. Yet neither the Didache, Clement or Ignatius mention the nondescript 9. Rather odd, don't you think? There is one final figure who looms large as almost another disciple. The ministry in Galilee is the first time we are introduced to one of the most intriguing of the Gospel's characters, Mary of Magdala. Mary Magdalene is the most prominent woman mentioned in the Gospels. That other Mary, Jesus' mother, rarely gets a look in after the nativity story. Mary, mother of Jesus, is a bit player in the Gospels. Mary Magdalene is the protagonist in a major subplot. As one of my favourite New Testament scholars, Mark Goodacre, has said, you have to unlearn her before you can learn about her. You probably think of Mary as a former sex worker devoted to Jesus.
Since he touched my hand, I knew that near him I always must be, and nothing can keep him from me. He is my destiny. I love him, I love him, I love him, and where he goes I'll follow, I'll follow, I'll follow. He'll always be my true love, my true love, my true love, from now until forever, forever. Follow him, follow him wherever he may go. There isn't an ocean too deep, a mountain so high it can keep me away from my love. I love him, I love him, I love him, and where he goes I'll follow, I'll follow, I'll follow. He'll always be my true love, my true love, my true love, from now until forever, forever, forever. I know I'll always love him. I will follow him wherever he may go. There isn't an ocean too deep, a mountain so high it can keep me away. I must follow him. Ever since he touched my hand, I knew that near him I always must be, and nothing can keep him from me. He is my destiny. I love him, I love him, I love him, and where he goes I'll follow, I'll follow, I'll follow. He'll always be my true love, my true love, my true love, from now until forever, forever, forever. I love him, I love him, I love him, and where he goes I'll follow, I'll follow, I'll follow. He'll always be my true love, my true love, my true love, from now until forever, forever, forever. I know I'll always love him.
The Gospel of Luke is the first to mention. Quote, Luke 8:1. Soon afterwards, Jesus went on through cities and villages, proclaiming and bringing the good news of the kingdom of God. The 12 were with him, as well as some women who had been cured of evil spirits and infirmities. Mary, called Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had gone out. End quote. After Luke's introduction, Mary of Magdala disappears until the Passion story. And what a spectacular reappearance she makes. Mary is the central figure in the narrative of Jesus' death and resurrection. She is a rock-solid disciple who is loyal to the end. She magnificently succeeds where the male apostles cravenly fail. She is brave when they are cowards. She is at the crucifixion when the disciples have fled. She is witness to the location of Jesus' burial. Her story and her eminence reach their climax in the Gospel of John. Mary is the first to discover the resurrection. She receives an angelic visitation, commissioning her to spread the word to the fleeing, feckless followers. Long quote. John 20:11. Mary stood weeping outside the tomb. She saw two angels in white, sitting where the body of Jesus had been lying. They said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "They have taken away my Lord." She turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you looking for?" Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him, "Rabbi." Jesus said to her, "Do not hold on to me, because I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father." Mary Magdalene went and announced to the students, "I have seen the Lord." And she told them that he had said these things to her. End quote. Mary Magdalene became the apostle to the apostles. The Gospel of John treats Mary with generosity. The Gospel of John elevates her to a status that even the disciples do not have. We know that Mary was popular amongst the Gnostics, a community that the evangelist was sympathetic to. The Gospel of John is comfortable with Mary. The Synoptic Gospels struggle to fit Mary into their narratives. After John the Baptist, Mary Magdalene is the most problematic figure in the Synoptics. The Synoptics want their readers to know that Mary is not a disciple, just some woman. They downplay her significance in the Passion. They provide contradictory accounts of her role at the resurrection. Although the Synoptic evangelists dislike Mary, they grudgingly recognise that she was too well known to be completely ignored. After the Passion stories, Mary Magdalene disappears. She is nowhere to be found in the book of Acts, nor in any of the letters. She just vanishes. Was she suppressed in earliest Christian tradition, erased from history? Or did the earliest church fathers not care? We don't know. In the Orthodox Eastern Church, Mary Magdalene is a saintly figure, but nothing more. The Catholic West decided that many other stories in the Gospels about anonymous women were really about Mary Magdalene. Western church fathers decided that a whole host of unnamed women were Mary Magdalene, the sinning woman at the house of the Pharisee, the adulterous woman at the temple, the woman at the house of Simon the leper, and the woman at the house of Lazarus. From this tradition, the Catholic Church decided that Mary Magdalene was a prostitute. Now, let's get one thing straight here. There is not a shred of evidence in the Gospels to support that. No Gospel says that Mary Magdalene was a sex worker. In the next episode of History in the Bible, I cover the weeks of Jesus' mission as he journeys to Jerusalem. Thanks for listening. For maps, charts, and diagrams, check out my website, www.historyinthebible.com.